31st of July 2024. This is one of that It Is Time videos of mine, and in today's one I am saying it is time to see politicians for exactly what they are. The problem that we have is that politicians is ruling our lives, but they are nothing more than fucking parasites. I want to tell you this. Way back when I was a youngster, we had a Minister of Agriculture, Hendrik Schoeman. He was a farmer, a commercial farmer that went to Parliament. And he started a campaign to promote the planting of usable grass along the highways and main roads of South Africa. Why did he drive that? Because those road servitudes had to be maintained and mowed, and the grass kept short because of the dangers from veld fires and all of that. But if you go and you sit and you do the calculation, it is thousands, if not millions of hectares of land in those road servitudes. But the Minister of Transport had the insight to understand what Hendrik Schoeman was talking about, and they implemented that. What was the result of that? That grass was mowed as it was supposed to be done, but now it was usable grass. It was mowed and baled, and then that bales were delivered to drought-stricken areas for the farmers to feed their animals. The farmers didn't pay for that grass. The government gave them that grass because it was grown on government land, paid by taxpayers of South Africa. That is what politicians did when I was a young guy. But then here in the late 60s, you started seeing a fucking weird thing happening in our parliament. More and more preachers and fucking lawyers started pitching up there. In the old days, communities selected a prominent, respected guy from the community, voted for him and sent him to Parliament. And those guys in those days, they normally, they sat there for one term or maybe two terms, and then they came back to the community and they carried on with their businesses or their farms or whatever. But here by the late 60s, the fucking professional politicians started rearing their heads. And this is applicable right throughout the West. These professionals, they started pitching up there. So where in the past, the Minister of Agriculture was a fucking farmer that understood farming and agriculture. The Minister of Transport was a guy that understood transport and what it entails. Nowadays, you don't see that anymore. You don't see that. And this professional politician species that started taking hold of our communities from the mid-60s and later on, those fucking things, they were there because it was a profession. In my young days, a guy would be very good with his hands. He will go through school, then he goes to technicons, and then he gets his certification as a fitter and a turner or a welder or something like that, and then he starts working either in his own business or he joins some other operators that use artisans like that, and he is immediately contributing to the economy of South Africa. The same thing happens with people studying for architects, for doctors, all of that. They went into their professions and they started contributing to the economy of South Africa, and they were making our lives better. So our tax money that was invested in all the training facilities and education facilities was giving dividends to us. But here in the late 60s, all of a sudden the fucking lawyers and preachers started pitching up on the political scene, and they got more prominent. And then you started guys going to university and they swatting these fucking tree climbing degrees, humanities cuck and all of that shit. Something that once he has completed his studies will never really have any economical value because it's a fucking tree climbing degree. But he's suited for politics. So, now we are sitting here in 2024 and we look at the parliament and you see the shit that is sitting there. There are people that are really a burden to society. But they are, and I'm going to give you this example that visualize the thing. A tick, blue tick, climbs onto your dog and he's a little fucking red thing. And he crawls in between the fur and he gets a hold on that dog. And 2 days later, there's a big fat blue tick hanging on your dog, fully loaded with the blood from the dog. That tick brings fuck all positive to that dog's life. Apart from irritating the hell out of him, it can also transfer fucking serious diseases to the dog. So the dog gets no benefit and the tick gets it all, and as part of his payment he makes the dog sick. Now that is exactly what a fucking politician is. They contribute fuck all to our lives. Nothing. They survive on big fat salaries provided by our hard work and earned money that created taxes. And he sucks the fucking taxes up. He just sucks it up. And he puts nothing back into our lives. Now multiply that one fucking tick by 400 and you've got your parliament. And then by a few other hundreds and you've got all the provincial councils and cuck. So the ticks, the parasites, are flourishing in the country. But we, the dogs, we are suffering like hell. And the ticks are big, fat and happy. And they don't care about the disease that they are spreading amongst us. Because they will always find more dogs to climb on and suck dry. Now last night somebody sent me a link to a black guy on TikTok that took a portion out of that video that I did on what white South Africa was like. And he makes statements in that what I'm doing is dangerous propaganda. And he stands there and he promotes himself as if he's got all the fucking knowledge in the world. In the meantime, he's a bubbling fucking idiot. The idiot. But he is smooth with his tongue. And I read through the comments and the people are sucking his fucking toes. And I think to myself, if this stupid fucking person has got so many people sucking his toes, how fucking stupid are they? But you will always find it. But the reality is this. You need to go and look at that guy that gets up every morning and goes to a job and works his 8 hours or 12 hours and gets home tired. End of the month he gets his salary and then the taxman takes a large bite out of it to feed the fucking ticks. Why do you think the politicians are so vehemently opposed to any talk about tribalism? Why? Because they know if tribalism becomes the norm, they're all fucked. Because tribal councils traditionally don't use professional politicians. Tribal councils consist out of the wise men from the community that guides and helps that community to flourish. Not fucking ticks. So understand, politicians will fight tribalism with everything they have. I mean, Fikile Mbalula made a bloody violent speech before the election about how the ANC will fight tribalism with everything they have. And I understand why he says that, because he knows that if we go tribal, they're all out of jobs. They won't have jobs. They will be unemployed. And best of all, they are unemployable. So, it is time for the normal, right-minded people to understand that politicians is a fucking dangerous parasite infection in our society. How will we get rid of them? You take your dog and you dip him and the ticks are gone. You got a bottle of juice from the pet shop with which you dipped your dog. Now, what is the juice that we need to get the political ticks off us? Tribalism. Go tribal. Tribal lands must return to the tribes, and the tribal councils must rule those lands for the communities. And I was very worried about the high levels of corruption that the ANC has implanted into the tribal societies and so forth, and the tribal leaders and so forth. And then I spoke to a Zulu guy, and he said to me they are very well aware of how some of those tribal leaders has been corrupted. But then he said to me, Colleen, you must just remember one thing. In our tribal environment, a man is selected to go to the tribal council. He is not born into that thing. He doesn't inherit the right to be there. And the tribes, they remove councillors from the tribal council just like that. They don't have any constraints or restraints. If a guy does not perform, he goes. And he said, in our tribes, the corrupt ones will be removed in a flash because we know who are the corrupt ones. And that gave me more determination to promote the tribal thing. And what you have to understand is that this political parasites, they are going to kill us at some stage. If you do not control the ticks on your cattle, you will lose cattle. You know it. That is why you dip your cattle regularly. So, the antidote for politicians is tribal. And you must be very careful that these smooth talkers, like this guy that I referred to on TikTok, do not bullshit you on behalf of the politicians. Because there is a mechanism also in operation that is brainwashing us, the people, to think that these politicians are our salvation. So the politicians have got their protection systems operating to keep their positions. Look at a guy like Corneille Mulder from the Freedom Front Plus. He sat on one TV show, and I can't remember the correct numbers, and he was bragging about he has been through 5 regimes in the parliament, and he's been there for 30 plus years and all that cuck. And I look at him and I listen to his shit and I think to myself, show me one thing that he achieved in that 30 years that made a difference, not a fucking difference, an improvement to my life or any other person's life in South Africa. And I had to rectify myself and say improvement and not difference. Because the fucking politicians has made big differences to our lives. We are all poorer. we are all suffering from a lack of service delivery. That was everything engineered by politicians. That's it. The politicians are responsible for the cuck with the Eskom power. The politicians are the reason that our harbours is not functioning. The politicians are the reason that our health services and hospitals are not functioning. Politicians are the reason that our education system is collapsing and that our schools are going down the fucking drain. Look at this feverish fight that they have now to fuck up the last of the functioning schools in South Africa. Look at that. And if you're a low IQ guy with a 30% pass rate, you will not understand it. Because you sit there on Twitter as a keyboard warrior and you tweet out cuck. You sending those tweets does not earn or contribute R1 to the economy of South Africa. You're a leech, you're a tick that are sucking out of South Africa, either in a state government salary or a SASSA grant. So you are a tick, you are a leech, you are a parasite. But you've got a big fucking mouth on Twitter. This is the things that we as a community need to understand, that the politicians is now a tick plague of pandemic proportions. We need to get rid of the parasites. Otherwise, we are all going to suffer and die. So, what is the answer? The answer is go tribal. Go tribal. If we do that, and our traditional tribal councils, Volksraad and things like that comes back, the politicians are gone. Don't forget that. And I'm going to say it again. If we can not eradicate the parasites, they are going to kill us. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.